Welcome to Look, Listen, Laugh. Now, I'm genuinely excited to have my guest on this episode. He's not only a great comedian, he's a great writer, producer, director. He can do it all. He's a great guy. Sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Steve Byrne. It's on.
We did it.
We did it. We got here.
We're here.
Yeah, I was kind of afraid that we wouldn't get this done because I brought all the equipment out here to the States, and then we worked together, and then we saw each other, and then you were gone, and then you said, I'm doing one night here that you can do in
Tempe.
In Tempe.
Yeah, but you don't bring this to New Orleans. We're not getting any work done in New Orleans.
Not at all. By the way, that was the best night. That was fantastic. The night that we
literally
had.
One of the, if not top three, if not the best night I've ever had in New Orleans with you and Jason Dallas, your lovely wife. Just a fun time from A to Z. It was so fun. Great dinner. Just a complete blur of laughter. It was so fun.
Right?
Yeah.
And like you said, the night could have finished at any point throughout that.
It almost ended 3 times.
Yeah.
But you kept doing cocaine.
Well,
you've never seen anybody do this much cocaine in your life. It was like an anteater.
Well, it's in honor of Jonathan, there
you go, yeah.
We had to have a night out in his honor. And so you've just got back from Hawaii doing the Blue Night, right?
That's why I'm fat and tan.
Living the good life.
Yeah, just eating like shit on vacation and sunburnt to a crisp, but so fun. Just great time. Had a great show at Blue Note, and with the kids.
The family, your folks were out there. Your wife Jess, everyone was.
Wife, kids, mother, father. So it's almost like when you're on vacation with family, you need a vacation from the vacation.
Yeah.
Because you don't even get to enjoy any time to your. It's like there's no time to yourself.
Sure.
Other than when you say, "Okay, good night, everybody," and you go, "Fuck, I'm hungry. This is awful." Did you guys have fun though? Everybody else have fun? Good. Just pay for it. Good. There we go.
But the fact is, like you're non-stop. Like you were one of the hardest working non-stop comedians. Like you would just go consistently. Whether it's writing a film, filming a documentary, working on a new hour of stand-up, taking the family on holidays. Like you would just consistently go. There's no there's no downtime for Mr. Byrne.
No downtime. I think when you, I think I've always worked my ass off. I've always done great work. The problem for me is I haven't had a hit yet, right? I've always gotten on base. I think once you get a hit, then you can take your foot off the gas pedal and go, oh, okay, I'm in the club now. I did it. You could be in the club for a year. You could be in it for 15 years. I've just always been on the outside looking in, knocking, like, okay, how about this? Is this good enough? No?
But the work has always been quality, though. And I'm just saying that because we're friends. I'm just saying that, like, from outside looking in, it's always been quality work on all fronts.
Well, thank you. No, I know I've done the work. I've definitely done the work. I've always, especially in the latter years, tried to think of things outside the box to, like, garner attention. But even, like, the last late night, fucking great.
Yeah.
Really good, but again, just like on a shit platform, like Amazon Prime, it's like hidden. So it's like, all right, well, okay, what are you gonna do next?
Yeah.
It's like and I think people don't realize, like, when you do a film like The Opening Act, which again, great reviews, first film, comes out during COVID. Fuck.
Same with the documentary, always amazing. That was great reviews. Like everyone that saw that loved it.
It's 2 years of your life right there. Opening act, 3 years of your life. The Amazon, the last late night. That's 4.5 years.
But here's the thing with you though, which I admire. You never get bitter. You never blame any. You're like, all right, what's next? Moving on. It's not like you're not one of these guys that get to the point where. When someone giving me a break, when do I? And it's like you create your own breaks. Like you've never waited for anyone to hand anything to you. You wanted to do a sitcom, and that's what you did. You created you wrote a sitcom, you created it, you got it up. And I remember when you and I were having lunch on the Warner Brothers back lot, and there was a guy that came up, and he came up to you and said, "Steve, I just want to congratulate you. you have 3 seasons of this thing going, which is unheard of in sitcoms in this day and age. And I just want to congratulate you. Walked off. You're like, you know who that was? I don't know. And it was the creator of Friends, and
Oh yeah.
I forget his name, but he was like very complimentary to you. So and to have had a sitcom like that for 3 seasons, that's a huge in itself. It's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. Again, all the things like comics set out to do, like especially of our generation, it's like got to get your own sitcom, right? And you get your sitcom, then it's like, oh, I'd love to do a movie. You do a movie. It's like I've done it all. It's all on the resume.
Yeah.
Like the experience is there. Just there isn't that thing where people go, oh, I know that guy. I know that guy from that.
Right.
It's always my line for myself is familiar, not famous. I know you from somewhere, but they don't know what that somewhere is. And I'm at the age where I'm like, I'm not telling you where you know me from. Because this never works out well.
Yeah.
It never does, yeah.
Yeah, well, I get recognized, but not for me, for other people all the
Eric
time.
Bana.
Yeah, Eric Bana.
Yeah.
And I just go along with it now. I'm just like, yeah, sure. You know, they're like, I've seen you on TV, haven't done TV. But they're like, I'm like, oh, yeah, cool, man. Oh, cool, yeah.
Yeah.
And just leave it at that. Like,
you should let them say, like, oh, Eric Bana, and you play along, and you're like, and just as they take the picture, 1, 2, 3, just like say something like, I don't like black people. And then just walk away. Like, Eric Bana said the weirdest thing to me when he was taking a picture. Yeah. Hitler was right. You know?
That Eric Bana's a real ass.
Yeah, God.
I had there was a black guy in New York. He's walking beside me. He's just giving me this look, and I'm like, all right. And then we get to the lights and to stop. He goes, "You're that Australian, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Australian." He goes, "I knew it was you. I love your movies." And I was just like, "Oh, thank you." And he just walked off.
You're like,
yeah, I don't know what.
My documentary on YouTube?
My short film about Batman that's going to be out in 3 years. Yeah. So it's but like right from the get-go though, I've always admired that about you. You've been someone who's just paved your own way and done it yourself. Like the first time when we met each other was your first weekend on the road ever doing Charlie Goodnight's, Raleigh, North Carolina. First time doing a comedy club out of New York on the road. And after that, then you came to LA for the first time. You did great there. Then you eventually moved out to LA. Then you did your first Comedy Central special, and you just kept on moving forward and kept on. You didn't wait for anyone to hand anything to you. It's just like, well, it's there. I'll go and do it. And
well, we're cut from the same cloth, which is probably why we're such good friends. But and I know this because I just spent the last 1.5 to 2 years working on your fucking story. So yeah, I mean, look, I think we're both individuals where, no one's going to give you anything. You got to go out and earn it. The key ingredient, I think, for me is, and perhaps you, is that we've done the work. We've done all the things necessary to succeed, right? The one key element besides a hit, right? The hit is only facilitated by the one thing I don't think I've been struck with just yet. I've been very fortunate. I'm not going to... Luck.
Yes.
The element of luck.
Sure.
And when I say luck, it means being at the right place at the right time, having the right vehicle at the right time, in the right place for people to access it and garner that attention. Then it snowballs. It just like...
Right.
I just haven't had that yet.
Yeah.
And it hasn't, I think because it hasn't happened, and I'm so competitive, obviously with myself, the drive only gets notched up harder and harder and harder each time you take a swing, and you maybe get on base, but it's not where you wanted it to be. It's like, all right, now I got to work twice as hard, 3 times as hard, 4 times as hard, and so. That's why writing these scripts, as you've been privy to or whatever, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of work, but it's like, all right, think about the thing that you're working on, and does this fill a void perhaps in the marketplace, but also are you super passionate about it?
Sure.
So we'll see.
Well, it's always been quality. Like I got friends in the States that are, in Australia and the States, but they're very well known, like at the top of their game in the comedy world, like in Australia, that know your work and follow your work, and they have nothing but praise, and they're really, you have the respect of the people who know out there.
Well, I
in
know
what
a
you
black
do.
guy in New York that likes your stuff. So, big fan.
On the corner of 5th and 49th?
That's
Is
right,
it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Big fan.
Yeah. But it's like I said from the get-go, you've always had that. And that's something maybe for me personally, I haven't had that, not belief in oneself, but just that ambitious drive, to do it. And I've always looked to you as someone like to not emulate, but to, gain some sort of, gives fuel to the fire. When I go work on something, you're always so encouraging too. When we talk on the phone,
vice versa.
you're always very. When I'm back in Australia, you're very supportive and encouraging, and it's good to have that support within the comedy world. Cause
Welcome to Blowing Each Other with Joel Ozborn.
well, you know all of this anyway, so
No, but please, I think that when you're in the middle of any of these projects, we find ourselves consumed with Night in Lockdown, for example. As I was gearing up to do the last late night, I would take my midnight walks and talk to you, and you need a soundboard. You need a sounding board. You need somebody to vent to sometimes. You need somebody to, even just listen, and eventually through the conversation and the matriculation of ideas, you come to a point where it's like, oh, there we go.
Yeah.
I think that could be good. So you've always been a great sounding board over the years, for sure, and hopefully vice versa.
Yeah, totally. But like I said, I know I keep on getting back to the beginning, but when I'd come to New York and I will have seen you one night and then come over to your apartment in Hell's Kitchen and we're going to go down to the cellar and or go to whatever club you're at that night. But you're like working on new stuff for that night. I'm like, but you just had a killer set last night. And you're already working on new stuff for tonight's performance. It was... that to me, like when I was starting out, like I was back in the early 2000s, but watching that going, wow, yeah, you've always got to be on it. Like you can't rest on your laurels and go, oh yeah, I got a good set. I'm gonna just coast on that. It was like,
yeah, because I think I would see guys like Greg Giraldo, Colin Quinn, Patrice O'Neill, and they do completely different sets each night.
right?
God damn. And so to me, it was like, all right, well, I guess that's the bar. If you want to keep working at the cellar, which you definitely want to, that's the club, right? Especially at the time in the city. It's
Sure.
like I've got to do what they do.
Yeah.
And so you would see that, and those things eventually would become habitual. And still to this day, I think even there's that insecurity when you're young, but also the optimism and drive when you're younger to prove yourself. But I think even as you get older, if you are not complacent, like I think we both are, where you feel a desire to still prove yourself, which we both still have, the notebook's still out on the table.
Yeah, I noticed.
Getting ready to
for
try out new
tonight's
stuff. So we'll see what happens tonight. Yeah.
It is interesting, like when you have those little milestones. And for me, what I always saw as a big milestone for you is when you got passed at the cellar. And I remember you called me up at the marina and we were talking on the phone. And you're like, I got passed at the cellar. It was like the biggest thing at the time to have, taken that next step back in the day.
Yeah, and again, one of those things when you're too young and dumb to even know what it meant. You have an idea of it, but then when you start working there, you're like, holy shit, like, wow.
But I think you had an idea though, like because I remember speaking to you, and because I wasn't quite sure. I knew of the cellar. I'd been out there with Jonathan, and he'd done Caroline's, and I knew of some other, in the cellar and a couple of other clubs. But I remember the excitement you had that day when we were talking on the phone that afternoon, and you were so elated that you got passed at the cellar. That was like the benchmark at that time for
I think it was just like knowing. Again, once you start working there, the caliber of talent. It's not like. Because you're like, oh, yeah, I got past the cellar. Holy shit, this is fucking great. But then you're like, oh, God, like, these guys are fucking amazing.
Yes.
And so if you want to stay here, again, you've got to do the work. You have to do the work. Otherwise, you're going to bottom out. They're going to get rid of you. And there's 30 people outside that door waiting to take your place. So it was understanding, okay, well, you got to work.
Yeah. What about in today's market, though, where you can work online and get a following online and then go and pack out a comedy club, but you haven't necessarily done that work or done the hard yards or got the flight hours down in front of a crowd as a stand-up?
Yeah, I think still, like, it doesn't matter the circumstances. The cream rises to the top. You've got to do the work.
Right.
The hours pay off in the minutes you're on stage. So, it's the old adage, 10,000 hours, right?
Right.
So you got to put them in. And I definitely, I think I did that. I remember I had read Malcolm Gladwell's book, and then I had a
Was that
journal.
Outliers?
What's that?
Was that
Outliers?
Yeah.
And then I had a journal. I started from the very first time I was on stage, and I would catalog every single set. But then you're doing like 6 or 7 sets a night, 7 days a week. It's like, all right, I'm just going to write the sets down.
Yeah.
And I would just habitually go in like a guest book, at a wedding, and I'd just start writing every single set. And I was like counting them. There was one time I kind of like tabulated the average or whatever. I was like, I think I did 10,000 hours in like 5-6 years.
Yeah, right.
In the city, only because I was doing like literally 7 or 8 sets a night.
Sure.
Monday through holidays, didn't matter. It was fucking bananas. I would, somebody recently, like if you could be 22 and go back and do it all, fuck no, absolutely not. I mean, all the work that went into it, especially at the beginning, it's like, oh my God, I just think about it. It's draining thinking about all that work. But when you're young, like being a comic especially, it's like falling in love head over heels, the biggest crush you've ever had with a girl. You can't wait to see her at night. You'll see her as much as you can that night. You can't wait till the next day that you get to see her again. That's how stand-up was for me, especially those like, the whole run, my first 7-8 years in New York City. 100% across the board. And that's why I don't think I could ever, I tried, but I ever had a stable relationship because
until
it's not like that. I have one true love, and her name is comedy, honey. I hate to put it that way, but it was like, it really felt like that, though.
Sure. Well, you did 13 or Bust documentary. I remember watching that. I was exhausted by wow. Not only doing 13 gigs in one night, but getting to those gigs. So forget about the stage time. Getting across and making that work. It was like incredibly inspiring. But wow, just the amount of work that went into just getting to the gigs, let alone doing the stage time.
Yeah, it's on YouTube now. It's called 13 or Bust, and basically it's showing you a night life of a comic in 2003. I think. So all these comics at the time were doing like their own kind of like albums, and I was like, well, why not do something kind of different and film it? So I said, what's the record for most sets? It was Attell. He did 12. I was like, I'll book 13. I'll maybe make 10.
Right.
Because cabs aren't going to work out. Mm-hmm. It always is that way. And it was perfectly constructed. Set for 15, 15 to the next set for 15. And I started at 7 and went till 2. And basically, every time I walked out of a club, a cab happened to me right there. I was like, what the fuck's going on tonight? It was crazy. And we had crews alternating. So one crew would be at this club,
setting up,
then they'd go to the next one, then they'd go to the next one. So we had it was bananas, like all the orchestration that went into it. But yeah, pulled it off, and again, a great little time capsule. Bill Burr's in it.
I remember you guys sitting around.
It was a lot of fun.
It's great that you encapsulated that time too. When you guys were all still, fresh and, I'm very
young and
much
energetic.
Yeah.
Optimistic. Yeah.
Had the steam.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially at that time. And look, there's no better gig in the world for a 20-year-old that like wants to do this. It's like you sleep in, you wake up whenever you want. There's no YouTube, there's no social media. It was just the gigs.
Yes.
That was it. You could drink at night. You could stay. I literally would stay up till 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'd get a bagel at the deli. I'd read the New York Post. I'd sleep till like 3 or 4 in the afternoon and fucking do it all over again. It was the fucking best gig ever. But even the gig comedy itself this is the best job in the world. You travel the world, especially here in the States. You travel the country. You have some great meals. You
hang out
meet
with
great
friends.
people. It's the fucking greatest. It is the greatest. You couldn't have found, for me personally, the single best occupation for me, period, across the board. That's why no matter what I've done or accomplished, even if I felt like it didn't hit, it's still like, at the end of the day, it's like, dude, look what you do for a living. Shut the fuck up. And I've never gotten to a point where I'm bitter or angry or upset. It's just like, yeah, you know, there's grievances along the way with certain projects or whatever, or execution or whatever it might be, or resonance. But still, at the end of the day, it's like, what a great fucking gig.
Sure.
I mean, Jesus Christ, what time? We fucking ate lunch at 4 o'clock. It was my first meal of the day. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I was just in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Working.
Yeah.
Working.
And with the family, hanging
2
out, going
shows.
snorkeling.
I saw friends. They came to the show. My other buddy was down the street, Ben Bailey, on Cash Cab. He was in town. He did a show. He came over, jumped on stage with me during my show, and then we all got fucking blottoed. It was like, I'm at work.
Yeah.
The best.
I think the only thing that would make it perfect is just take out airports and planes. And then
That's the part of the. I think when you're young, the excitement of going to new cities, new experiences, new clubs, new museums, all that stuff. It's exciting, but then it's been 20 plus years for me.
Yeah.
Wife and kids. The hour on stage absolutely makes up for everything else. Still to this day, even on the worst night, you're still like, that was fucking fun.
Yeah.
Or the one joke that worked. You're like, fucking
Yes.
great. Now I can't wait to do that next show, see if we can build on that. Or shift that there, move that there. I bet that'll work. It's like, you have to have that challenge. Otherwise, you're just at the Ford plant doing rivets.
Yeah, right.
And then you go
Going
to the
through the
fucking bar,
motions.
you get blottoed, and kick the shit out of the cattle.
Yeah,
It's like, you've got to challenge yourself every step of the way. And so I think that's why, again, you and I came up in a time where a comic could do an hour special, put it on HBO or Showtime, and tour for that for 3 years.
Yeah.
And these days, you do an hour special, and it's irrelevant within 4 months.
Yeah.
If that.
Yeah.
If that.
And
So-
the amount of time that it goes into making a great hour special. I'm not talking about an hour special, but a great hour special.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
at least two plus years, to get that down. But I know what it was like touring back in the day, because as I was tour manager for Amazing Jonathan, getting back to that night, Raleigh, North Carolina, Charlie Goodnights. I remember seeing you on stage that first show, and you were great. You killed. I remember you kept the music going, and you were just fucking around with the crowd when you first got up there. And I remember Jonathan saying, he goes, fuck, that guy's good. When we were watching. And Jonathan was always very honest with his opinion.
Yeah.
But I remember after that first show, walking along, and you just stopping me going, hey, who does the pre-show music?
Yeah.
And I said, oh, it was me. He goes, you selected that Oasis song? Because it was that roll with it.
Yeah.
Because we used to do, through the crowd, I would be behind a curtain with a camera on a remote, zooming in on people, and I'd write like comical titles about just shitting on people in the crowd, pre-show really.
Yeah.
And the song of that was Roll With It, which is off your favorite album, which is none other than What's the Story? What's the story?
Yeah, perfect. I mean, look at that.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to follow these guys?
Yeah.
Fucking great. Great
Nolan
artwork.
Liam, at the peak
Gallagher.
of their career.
Yeah, this album. So I'm in college, and I hear Wonderwall on MTV. I'm like, what the fuck is that? Because you got to remember, at that time, it's like Limp Bizkit, it's
Buck
Nirvana.
Cherry? Oh no, they were later.
Nirvana, grunge.
Yes.
And then you
Pearl
also
Jam.
have like gangster rap
Yeah.
and.
Informer.
Well, that's definitely not gangster rap. But yeah, 12 inches of snow. But I never liked any of that stuff. Like I'd go to these keg parties and college parties, and I was like, I fucking can't stand any of this music. And I just never had. I guess I wasn't really into music, right? And then Oasis comes out, and I hear Wonderwall, and I didn't. It wasn't even like the song. It was like the last da 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 da, and that.
Yeah.
It just kept going through my head, and I was like, what the fuck? So I bought the album, and the minute I put it in, I was like, what the fuck? Where's the camera? What the fuck is this? I was blown away.
Just from the get-go, right?
Hello. It was like,
I love the opening of Hello when you have just like it's in a far distant room. Ding, ding, it
goes into,
you're just hearing that riff from Wonderwall in the distance, and then the guitar comes screaming through, and then bam, you're off to the races.
I hadn't heard anything like it, and then I'm like, I was like, then Don't Look Back in Anger. Like I was like, I listened to that song.
Yes.
My roommate was like, will you stop fucking playing that song? I remember hearing some might say, I remember exactly where I was driving. I was going to a country club where I worked. Not not where I was eating,
Yeah.
where I fucking worked.
What
I
were
always
you?
worked at
So
country
you
clubs.
were waiting there? Or?
Waiter at a
Yeah.
country club. That was always my thing in college. That and kitchens and whatever.
Because you're at
but-
Kent State, right?
Kent State,
Yeah.
in Ohio. I'm driving and I'm hearing Some Might Stay, and I'm like, well, that's not the lead singer. Who's that? Who's that singer? That's a different voice. I was like, Noel and Liam Gallagher?
Yeah.
So the brothers, it's brothers singing this.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, so he sang Wonderwall, he sang Don't Look Back in There? This is fucking cool.
Yeah.
And then I just listened to that album nonstop, over and over and over again. It's like I only needed one CD.
Yeah.
And then I got a job at a CD store, Digital Days, in Ohio.
Yeah.
And the guy working there, he's like, well, have you heard Definitely Maybe? I'm like, Definitely Maybe? What's that? He's like, you haven't heard their first album? I'm like, they have another album. He goes, oh yeah.
That's what was great about those days when it was more of things were a mystery.
There's no internet.
Yeah, yeah.
The internet isn't what it is yet.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
We don't even have cell phones.
Right.
Okay? So they have another album. Oh yeah, this is fucking great. Buy that. Put it in. Supersonic. What the fuck is this?
Yeah.
All day, on repeat. Just that guitar outro.
Yes.
I mean, I never heard a guitar outro that was like a 7-minute guitar. I could let over and over and over and over again, just in my ears. And then, because I worked at the store, oh, you haven't heard the imports? Imports?
Yeah, the Japanese.
Where the fucking imports?
Yeah.
Oh, the B-sides. The
singles.
fucking B-sides. There's more. And now I'm going down this rabbit hole. Now is also the time of Q Magazine.
Yep.
Mojo,
NME. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I can read about these guys? They're fucking assholes. They're hilarious. So it was the only band throughout the course of my life where I literally would not only buy the album, but I would buy every single magazine they were in to read the interviews, to hear what they would say. Not just what they would sing, but literally to hear what they would say. Because what they would say would be as entertaining as this right here.
Yeah.
And from there on out, I mean, right there, you got Be Here Now.
There you go.
Right on the shirt. So just a huge, massive Oasis fan. And anytime I hear this, it takes me back to college. It takes me back to every great memory I've ever had on the road where you've been out with me.
Yeah.
We go out after a show. We end up at a Irish pub, dive bar. Can I please plug my phone in? Absolutely. Oasis.
Yeah.
That's it.
And
We're
if we
off to
find a
the races.
jukebox, we just commandeer
Hijack it.
Yes.
Absolutely hijack it. This album, I mean, hello. Roll with it, how we bonded. I
Yes.
still have, over COVID, I sent you a picture of the gray disc you had where you wrote all the
yeah.
B-side
Yes.
songs you had burnt onto a disc for me.
Yes.
And
I had to search high and low. I got them off Napster back in the day.
Oh my
These
God.
rarities off
Yeah.
Napster back in like 2000 in Jonathan's garage, and I'm just searching for all these rarities and hearing like demos for all the songs and like demo Talk Tonight, and this is just like it's
Yeah.
like finding the Holy Grail. All of these great rarities.
hello. I mean, just out of the gates, Gary Glitter ripoff, right?
Yeah.
Roll with it. You have that Beatles outro at the very end of that. Wonderwall speaks for itself. Don't
Right.
Look Back in Anger.
I'll always love the transition between that. When I remember when first hearing it, it made me think of a Beatles album when you'd hear a great song by
Yeah.
John and then a great song by Paul, and with those two butt up with Liam and Noel singing lead on
Yeah.
each. That transition from the two, it was like this is like it's like took me back to the early
It just
albums.
gave the album that much more character and personality, and Swamp Song.
Yep.
Which
Yeah.
is God, I forget the song. I just heard it recently, but it's like an old '60s track, and I was like, that's the fucking riff.
Yeah.
That's the riff he nicked from. Some might say could be one of my favorite. Cast No Shadow,
Yeah.
and then you start reading about the.
Right.
It's like, oh, this is about Richard Ashcroft. Well, who the fuck is he? Oh, the guy from The Verve?
Verve.
Oh, they know each other?
Yeah.
Well, these
They
guys
toured
are fucking
together?
great.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is so cool. And then
Yes.
you're learning about Britpop and Blur and fuck Blur, and then I'm listening to Blur. I'm like, but they're fucking great too, and
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
Blur. And
Yeah.
so you're reading all this stuff, and
But remember at the time, like for anyone that wasn't around during that time, the magnitude of Oasis and Britpop music,
Yeah.
it was huge. Like, and then they're selling out like Nebworth, you know,
Yeah.
like biggest grouping of people in the history of UK, concert goers.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing between, like you mentioned, between Blur and Oasis, it was like that was like front page news consistently. Like
Yeah, in the UK for sure,
Yeah.
and then all the drama that goes on with Oasis, where you would get bootlegs and hear. I remember they did like a show in Vancouver, and it was like a 3-song bootleg of their concert, and you buy it, and you're like, wait, it's only 3 tracks. It's like, yeah, because somebody threw a shoe at Liam. He told them we're not fucking monkeys, and then they left, and then you just hear booing for like the next, like 8 minutes. Like, I just spent $30 on this fucking thing.
Yeah.
But it was so funny because it's like every show in the States was like, are they going to be there? Is Liam going to leave? Is Noel going to leave? Because that was always part of like the combustive nature of that band, which was, again, you bought into the drama. It was almost like when you like Oasis, I wouldn't even say you like Oasis. Being an Oasis fan is almost like being a Springsteen fan.
Yeah.
You don't see Springsteen once and go, I love him. Everybody that likes Oasis loves Oasis.
Yes.
They know everything about Oasis. It's like joining a cult. And it's almost like you're watching professional wrestling. Because as much as it's about the wrestling, it's all the drama behind the scenes that you're reading up on, the gossip. That's what professional wrestling is, right? It's all the drama leading up to
The event.
the concert or the event. And so with these guys, they were fucking hilarious, outspoken. If you don't like the answer, then don't ask me the fucking question. I mean, it's like, that's Noel, right? It's so brash, and they bit into something they just inherently are. So unapologetically them. That it's a North Star for everybody. Everybody wants to be that brash. Everybody wants to be that kind of outspoken and honest. But people can't be that honest because they don't have the security of talent. Knowing like, I just sold 10 million albums. I can say whatever the fuck I want.
And
because people will still come and show up for me. Like, a lot of people have jobs.
And bosses.
They have HR. You can't do that, right?
Yeah.
So these guys were like these kind of like renegade rock stars that, especially as a comic, look up to. And I mean, so influential that I started like slagging other comics in New York City.
Walking in with a swagger into the cellar.
Oh my God, definitely swagger, wearing my parkas, talking shit. And then, like, literally apologizing the next day because I was like, this feels weird. I'm not really not like this. I just like Oasis, and I'm so sorry about that. So, just like, that's not me. It's not me. I learned pretty quickly that's not me. And you authentically want to be yourself. And I think that's really what it boils down to. They're just 2 authentic guys who happen to be extremely talented, completely different personalities, and everything they put out is fucking great. So much so, I even buy the solo shit. And it's okay. But them together, lights out.
Well, it's funny because people think, even like before iPhones, iPods, you travel with iPod, you got all the records. But you traveled with a thick CD case with all the singles on it.
Just their stuff.
Yes, I remember because one of those nights back in 2000 at Raleigh, you said, afterwards, you said, I want to give you something. Went back to your room and you go, here, give this back to me tomorrow. And you handed me this thing. I was up all night with my portable disc.
Burn it all, yeah.
No, I was just listening. I didn't have a computer with me at the time. I was just listening up until like early hours of the morning, all these rarities and it was fantastic.
Rocking Chair, You Want to Be a Spaceman. And look, I mean, Acquiesce to this day is one of my favorite songs by them, but to me, like the fucking song I could listen to over and over again. Again, a fucking B-side, The Master Plan. It might be my favorite song by Oasis.
That album, The Master Plan, is fantastic, which should have been their 3rd album.
And then you hear about like what happened with Be Here Now and how it just kind of
bloated
got
out,
the best of them. And if you go back and piece it all together, what the construct could have been, should have been,
You sent me a track listing where someone put together what the album should have been. It was great.
Yeah, and you... If you had minimized those songs, to 4 minutes and not fucking 8 minutes or 7.5 minutes, like I loved, you know what I mean? I love I Hope, I Think, I Know.
Yes.
I love So many of the songs.
Half a World Away.
I love all, but especially those rockers on.
Yes.
On Be Here Now.
On Be Here Now.
If those are 4.5 minutes.
Pie in the Sky.
Humble. Yeah.
Don't Go Away. Great track.
Don't Go Away is great.
Yes.
But you all around the world, I was never too keen on. It was a little too saccharine. But I think you put those together. You put Master Plan on there. You put Acquiesce on there. You put a few other of the like ballady ones, the acoustic ones that Noel had. I think you got a fucking killer third album.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about the downfall of Britpop after that.
Yeah,
so.
right.
But again, that's part of the allure of Oasis. It was going to blow up at some point.
Yeah, but it was so big at the time. I remember when that album came out and Be Here Now, it got rave reviews. People were lining up for hours outside.
Because they fucked up on What's the Story.
Piccadilly. But then as time went on, they went, hang on, this album ain't that great.
Sure,
And so the review, I remember reading later reviews on that album that were a lot more scathing than the initial reviews on that. But on that tour of What's the Story, Morning Glory, when they were coming to Australia, they were going to play the MCG. I remember seeing that going, holy, that's like the major cricket ground.
Right.
That's something like, over 70,000 people. And then the whole tour got cancelled because Noel and Liam had a big fight, and Noel went, I'm out of here, took off. And so it wasn't until the first time I saw him at the Universal Amphitheatre in LA on the Standing on the Shoulders of Giants tour.
Yeah.
But I remember when they got to the point where they did that Acquiesce song, and then when Noel started belting that out, everyone just on their feet, jumping up and down, screaming. I thought, wow, this is cool, It was like, yes, Noel has spoken.
Yeah, I remember the best one I saw was in New York City. I forget the name of the venue we went to, but it was a little smaller. I think it was Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. After that, no, it was Standing on the Shoulder of Giants in New York, and they played My Generation for the encore.
Yes.
And it was like, somebody should be filming this.
Yeah.
This is a video.
Liam's vocals when he sings that song are just so spot on.
It was one of the best live performances I've seen of a song, and they had just done like Don't Look Back in they don't do encores. They did one song. It was that song, The Who, and they came out and people were jumping up. People were fucking flying. I remember bodies. I was like, this is fucking chaotic. It was so fun. It was so great. It was exactly what you'd want. It was like Ferris Bueller's Day Off was filming in that concert venue at the time, whatever. But I remember telling you I'd met Noel and Liam flying to.
This is when we both met up in Vegas.
In Vegas to watch them at the Hard Rock, and we got tickets to that, and I was flying from LA to Vegas, and they were on the same flight.
Yes.
And I couldn't fucking believe it. Got pictures with them, and Liam Gallagher could not have been nicer.
Yep.
He was super cool. We talked for 10 minutes of baggage claim, and once he found out I was a stand-up, he just kept peppering me with questions. I was like, but I want to ask you like 1,000 questions. You're the interesting one. But for him, I'm sure he's getting asked the same things all the time. So for him, it's like when you call in sports radio, a comic wants to talk about sports, but the sport commentators want to talk about comedy because all they do is talk about sports. So I couldn't believe how cool he was, how nice he was, and it to me was just like, all right, I was always a fan for life. Now I'm definitely a fucking fan for life. So.
And then you went up to Noel and you asked for a photo?
I told you this. I asked for a picture, and he's just sitting there, and he goes, he had sunglasses, and he goes, all right, let's get it over with. And he just stood up, snapped, and he sat back down.
Yeah.
And that was it. And it was like, it was so on brand.
Right,
I couldn't help but laugh.
Yeah, sure.
I was like,
of course
I thought it was funny.
Yeah, because I was excited because on the flight because I flew in from Australia that day, and I was on the flight from LA, and their manager, Marcus Russell, was on the flight. And who's going to know who Marcus Russell? But I read all the biographies. I knew who he was. And I was I'll leave him be. I don't want to go and annoy the guy. So I left him. And then when we spoke on the phone, I'm like, I met Marcus Russell. Oh, I saw Marcus Russell. He was on my flight. And you're like, well, guess who was on my flight? Oh, wow.
Checkmate, bitch.
But then, because my girlfriend at the time, Eliza, was working at the VIP desk at the Hard Rock, so I went in that afternoon. It was the afternoon before the gig that night, and I told her, Steve flew in. He just met, Noel and Liam. I can't believe it. I walk out, who's walking by me? Noel. And so I went, oh, Noel. And I put my hand and shook, very soft hands, by the way. Like he's never lifted a road case in his life, you know. Shook his hand. I said, oh, you inspired me to play the guitar. And he goes, oh, any good? And I just went, I play your tunes. And he goes, all right. Just keep on walking, you know.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, best band for sure. And it's funny, my son recently asked me, we were driving him, my son's 7, he goes, why do you like the Beatles so much? I'm like, well, I love the Beatles, but you're listening to Oasis. And he always puts them together.
Really?
And he goes, okay, so why do you like Oasis so much? I go, Ken, when you're a kid and you're like a teenager or you're in college, there's going to be a band, there's going to be somebody that comes along.
It's going to resonate.
That puts an imprint on you, and that's going to be your band for the rest of your life. You're going to be devoted to them. It's going to literally like earmark your teens or early 20s, and it's going to be part of your life from there on out. So eventually, you're going to find that band. This happened to be the band for me.
Yeah.
And I just think, wow, of all the fucking, like, could you imagine, like growing up now and be like, we got to go see Maroon 5. It's like, brrr, tink, brrr, tink, Maroon fucking 5. What? It's like mom shopping music. It's like fucking awful.
Yeah.
Like, what's fun about Adam Levine? He's a fucking bar mitzvah DJ with tattoos.
Yeah.
Like, Oasis is great tunes, great ballads.
A rock and roll band.
You want to go out, you want to get fucked up,
Yeah.
you want to get in a fight, you want to meet girls, you want to have a good time, and then go down a rabbit hole and watch some of their interviews. You'll look, I'm a professional stand-up comedian. What comes out of these guys' mouth is so fucking funny. Do yourself a favor, YouTube, Noel Gallagher watches his own music videos. It's 10 minutes. It's him shitting on himself for 10 minutes. It's fucking hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. So remember that's what you get with these guys.
Remember back in the 90s, though, they had an album called Wibbling Rivalry, of them two arguing into an interview. And that hit the charts in the UK. That was like a top chart, like
top 40 or something.
Yeah.
Just them.
Of them just arguing. And that's like the magnitude of that band at the time.
Yeah, and it's, once people find out, too, you like Oasis, like Jim Jeffries and I think when he first moved to LA, I don't know, there was something off. I don't know that he liked me or whatever. Who knows?
Right.
There was some static there.
Right.
And then we were together one night and we started talking about Oasis. And he texted me today. and we just text each other articles about Oasis.
That's
Have you heard Noel's new solo album? Did you hear this new track? Whatever. And so,
That's great.
Everything
is just put to the wall. You like Oasis? Oh, yeah.
That's it. Yeah, we're friends now.
Yeah.
There's a guy, Oasis DNA, who lives in Texas. If you like Oasis, if you have any interest in him in this band like we do, Oasis DNA, this guy is like a museum curator. He has all these important articles of Oasis through the history, like from this video shoot, here's the call sheet. From this video shoot, here's the Lila drum kit. Here's,
Yeah, right.
all these different things. And I followed him and, I just messaged him. I'm like, come out to a show. He's going to come out. And I'm like, fuck, if he didn't leave like an hour and a half, I was like, I'm renting a car and I'm going to come out and I just want to see everything.
Wow.
I just want to see everything.
Yeah.
And I might do it.
Great.
Just because I'm such a huge fucking fan. But again, one of those things where it's like, I love learning about the history of like the different pieces that he puts up on Instagram. And there isn't a band else I've come across over the course of my life. I love the Killers. I love the Beatles. I love Harry Connick Jr., right?
Yep.
I'm not doing that with anybody else. I don't care about what these guys say in an interview. It's never going to be as entertaining as what these guys do. And what comes out of their mouth, again, is as entertaining as some might say, Champagne Supernova. I mean, countless quotes. My favorite one, and we could end it on this, is the guy Tom DeLonge, I think. I don't butcher his name, because I like the band, Blink-182. He was saying how, this fucking made me laugh so hard. He was saying how the first time he met Oasis, he's at this, like one of those big festivals. All these bands are there. And Liam Gallagher comes busting into the green room. And Blink-182 just finishes their set. And they're partying. And Liam Gallagher comes in. And he goes, hey, you guys Blink-182? They go, yeah. He goes, since I've been in the United States, best I've seen. And the guys from Blink-182 go, oh, you like us? He goes, I didn't say that. And he just walks out. It's like, I mean, who in their right mind would go in and say something like that, but then to have that response? I mean, that is fucking hilarious.
Yes.
Absolutely hilarious.
Yes.
And that's why I love that band.
Yeah. Now, and to back up what you said, you know me, I still love Billy Joel. Now, I would be in the garage listening to Billy Joel. Amazing Jonathan would come in, turn this shit up. But whenever I had Oasis on, no comment. Or I have him on the car. I remember years later, we're talking about, he said, have you seen the Supersonic doc? Yeah. So he goes, fuck, it's good, man.
Yeah.
It's good.
That's great.
So, he always would put up and listen because, I would just listen to them nonstop.
Of course, yeah.
And then, Billy Joel until he made me turn it off. But, that's a testament to that. Jonathan was also in the same camp.
There we go.
Now,
what's the story, Morning Glory? Yeah.
What's the story, Morning Glory? Yeah. And you know what the great thing about that was too, as you were just saying that? That was a time when you would buy the album and first song. When you,
A to Z, I could listen to the whole thing.
But you got onto this album because of hearing Wonderwall, right?
Yeah.
But then it opens you up to all these other great songs in there.
Yeah.
That are as if not better. Some might say you got Don't Look Back in Anger, Champagne Supernova.
Look at them.
Yeah.
They're fucking cool. They look fucking cool.
Yeah.
It's like, what 18, 19, 20-year-old isn't going to look at that, hear that music, go, fucking, they're meeting girls.
Yeah.
They're meeting some girls. They're fucking doing it right. I want to hang out with these guys.
Come on.
I mean, I absolutely love these guys. Great.
As you know, on this podcast, I have you bring favorite album, favorite book, favorite film. So your favorite film, which is a big coincidence, because I just saw Superman, the movie, 3.5 weeks ago in Sydney, 45th anniversary, up on the big screen. It was fantastic.
This film, again, I think I could say True Romance and be cool, right?
Yeah.
But,
honorable mentions, yeah, sure. Midnight Run, that's up there.
Oh, what a great film. But this is the first film I remember as a kid. This is the first film I remember seeing as a kid, being like, whoa, what is going on? What is this? Like a movie. Okay, because this comes out in, I believe, 78. So I'm 4 years old, and I'm watching this, and I'm like, what is this? I went back 2 or 3 more times as a kid. I gotta see Superman again. I gotta see Superman again.
That's fantastic.
And it's not until you get a little older that, you realize how great a film it really is. It's 3 films in one, right? You have this Shakespearean dialect in a sci-fi world, which is Krypton, which is the first, 35, 40 minutes of the film.
Brando helming the ship for that part.
Yeah. Then you have kind of this poetic Norman Rockwell-esque film of starting to question who you are, what your identity and purpose on life is, with the middle half where Clark Kent discovers he's different. Then you have the back half of the film, which is New York City, Metropolis, and you're off to the races. And it's set the template for comic book films because Richard Donner, and I've gone down the rabbit hole once again on this film. Richard Donner the director instituted, he had basically when you walked in onto the set, when you're a production head, whether you're set design, costume, whatever, verisimilitude, which means to believe in or have truth in. And so he's like, we're going to make a film where this is all actually really happening. There's no it's not camp, it's not comic booky. It's set that if this doesn't exist, you don't have Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight films.
Right.
You don't have
Batman 89.
There's no Iron Man. Yeah, they were the first to do it. It was the most expensive film done at the time, and this is post Star Wars. And there's little things that you don't even realize are so calculated in there. The first line of the film is Jor-El standing there in front of this kind of jury of elders, denouncing and about to
with Terrence Stamp and his
incriminate,
yes.
General Zod and Ursa and Nan. And the first line is, "This is no fantasy. no, this is, this is no fantasy. I forget the exact line, but they're literally telling you
from the get-go.
This is no fantasy. This is real. Everything you're about to see is real. And it goes another 2 or 3 lines. And I was like, wow, what a great lesson. And there's different forms of dialect. There's the storytelling in it is great. The love story is great. The casting is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Christopher Reeve is amazing.
Yes.
Marlon Brando as his father, Gene Hackman, is so likable and fucking hilarious and devious at the same time.
And he's got that craziness to his character as well.
Very calculated, very intelligent, and there's little things in the film that you don't even realize between Superman and Superman 2, because they were filmed at the same time,
Right.
is that Gene Hackman, when he puts the kryptonite around Christopher Reeve's neck, he's about to blow up California, have the coastal property that he wants and desires, and Superman is as powerful a being as can be, and he basically points to his head, or he says mind over muscle, Superman, right? So he kind of points to his head, and Superman is thrown into the pool.
Yes.
Superman 2, Superman reconfigures this chamber that he's going to lose all his powers in, and he gets Luthor to be an ally. Luthor turns on him and has the 3 the General Zod and whatever, they're outside the chamber. They end up losing their powers. And so as that happens, Superman looks back at Gene Hackman and he points to his head. It's like those calculated little nods that you take for granted watching it. You're just sitting there going, oh, he's saying, hey, I outsmarted you. No, it's a callback to the very first film.
Right. So
It's
it works
all
on both
well
levels.
construction,
Yeah.
and it's like when you start to lift the hood and look at all the nuts and bolts, and you go, oh, that's there for a fucking reason. He did that on purpose because this is a callback to that, and Superman's kind of saying, fuck you, dude.
Yeah.
I'm as smart as you are, maybe smarter.
Yeah.
So I think, again, when you find a film that is almost like a guilty pleasure, but also is resonant with you, I think most of us have a film that is resonant with us because we were children, and it stays with you. I think when you give yourself the time to research it and go down the rabbit hole and learn more about it, it just makes you appreciate the end product so much more. And to this day, I've seen this film more than any other film I've ever seen. It's the best coming-of-age film I've seen. It's still to this day the best superhero film I've ever seen. Everything is perfectly executed, and Richard Donner is an incredible storyteller from A to Z. And knowing that he was running at times 5 units at once to get this goddamn film
unbelievable.
done. It's
to be shooting 2 films of that magnitude and technology that hadn't even been developed yet, that they were experimenting with on this film.
Yeah, I mean, they were literally, the marketing of the film wasn't just that, this is Superman. It's, you're going to see a film where you believe a man could fly. And my kids watched it going, this looks fake. It's like, yeah, it looks fake compared to, Iron Man and all this CGI stuff you're doing. But if you're a kid and you don't know any better, it looks, there's shots in it still to this day that look fucking so good. I was watching it recently. There's a shot where Superman Luthor is like set out this high-pitched scream, and Superman's got to find him. So he's kind of scouring the city looking for the signal so he can detonate this bomb. And he's flying, but as he's flying, what you realize is you're seeing the reflection of Superman in a building.
Right.
And then it cuts to the reflection, and then he goes past the building. It's so layered. You're like, wow.
Yeah.
How did they do that? And I've seen it a bunch of times. And there's a bunch of women in the office. They all go running. Oh my God, Superman! And it looks so real.
Yeah.
It looks fucking amazing. There's another shot where Superman just saved Lois, and he's flying around, and he's flying, and the camera twirls around, and then in the same motion, it locks with him, and then it locks, and he rotates as he's kind of twisting around, and then he's coming down to stop the burglar. And it was like, wow, that's such a complicated shot because you're watching it, and it's like you can kind of disseminate how they're doing it, but then you're seeing, it's really...
But knowing the time that it was shot and what they had to do to create that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's like there's no computers, there's no CGI. The amount of thought.
It's all practical.
Yeah.
All practical. And you don't have a Superman film without Christopher Reeve. He is.
And when he's playing Clark Kent, and he doesn't push too hard either. Like comedically, like he delivers it honestly, but it's not. It never It never goes over into a kind of a campy portrayal like of even Superman, but of that, because it could be very easy, like for an actor to go into that kind of, I don't know, to push too hard, and it would have just become farcical, especially with the Clark Kent character.
Again, verisimilitude, right? He's completely believing in the reality and the situation of it. There's this great scene where Christopher Reeve, Superman, just had shown Lois Lane around New York City,
right?
Flying around
from the porch.
From the porch, he drops her off, and there's this great moment where actually how they did it was they actually had a screen, like a movie screen, right? And so she's looking at a movie screen, and Superman's standing there, and he goes, "Well, bye now," and he just kind of takes off, right? It looks so real.
Yeah.
But the screen is actually Superman.
Oh, so he was never in the actual shot.
The camera stays on Lois. She goes inside. The door knocks. Knock, knock, knock. She opens the door. It's Clark Kent.
In the one shot,
In the one shot. Then she goes into the bathroom, and the camera pivots again. And so it's kind of locked off. And now all your attention's on Christopher Reeve. How's he going to react? And he takes his glasses off, and his shoulders come up. And it's it's so well written, it's so smart. And he says, "Lois, there's something I want to tell you." She comes out, she's smitten. She's over the moon. She doesn't even realize Superman's standing right there. That's Clark Nice. Yes. I'm going to show you the time of my life. He realized he can't give her this identity. She doesn't even know. She's blinded to it all.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's so well written. It's so perfectly executed.
Sure.
And it's the dynamic, what you were talking about, of Christopher Reeve and that duality. And it's funny, my son, the other night, I call him Kent for a reason.
Yes.
So we named him Kenneth after my wife's father, who had 3 daughters, never had a son. So I'm like, we got to name him after your father. It was like, Kenneth. Well, I'm not going to call him Kenny. I'm not going to call him Kenneth. And I was like, well, Kent. Let's call him Kent for short.
Yeah.
So selfishly, I got what I wanted. Because Kent, I think, especially in this movie, what a template of a human being to aspire to be.
Of decency and ethics.
And
morals.
I told my son, I said, everybody thinks Superman is great, and it's great to be Superman. Who doesn't want to do the right thing all the time? But you think about Clark Kent, and Clark Kent is Superman, but he doesn't tell anybody. And he's willing to play the fool. He's willing to be the butt of the joke. And think about the power that comes with that. Knowing you could obliterate anybody, you could score touchdown anytime you want, you could run laps about everybody, you could take anybody's girl, you could fly, you could shoot lasers out of your eyes, but you keep it all to yourself. And it's such an incredible way to live. And it always reminds me of that poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling. And it really is a poem about keeping balance.
Yeah, if you can walk with kings, yet keep the common touch.
That's right. Yeah, you can lose all your fortune and still go back to and never complain. It's like it's a perfect poem about how to stay balanced as a human being and keep your wits about you, all that stuff. And I really think that when I think about it, it's like it's Clark Kent. It's another example of living a very, very balanced, level-headed way of living your life. And I had this conversation with my son. It probably flew over his head, but yeah,
it'll get through.
I hope so. Yeah.
But you've already instilled great. Like Kent's great. Like you've already instilled qualities in him to, I'm sure, at some point in the not too distant future, appreciate those. But also him having those qualities without knowing it. As well,
so.
Without it being a conscious sort of effort. You know?
Nature versus nurture. Yeah. But now he knows he makes me laugh, and he knows he can do things all day that make me laugh. And his thing lately is, he heard it on a bus, because it's not him, but he does it in his own way, and it makes me fucking laugh so hard. We're at a restaurant the other day. He goes, I'm like, Ken. I just started laughing like, Ken, you cannot do that.
What bus was he on? What's happening on this bus?
On the bus with all these kids. And so he does it all the time to me. We'll be in public. He goes, I'm like, Ken, you seriously can't
What does
do that.
Jess say when he says?
She's like, Kent, that's inappropriate. You cannot say that. Now what he does, though, because it's me, what he does is he makes it as soon as he goes, Daddy. And I go, Kent, no, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. But I laugh. The first time he did it, I was crying. We're at a restaurant. I'm crying, and I'm like, you cannot do that. He has no idea what he's
the
saying,
reference
right?
point, yeah.
But I am fucking howling, and part of me wants him to stop doing it, but part of me is like, I mean, it's so fucking funny.
Yeah. And there's
Daddy.
but there's an innocence to it, which just takes it a whole nother level.
I mean, having a 7-year-old look up at you and say that to you, and then he starts laughing afterwards. It's like, of course I'm going to laugh. So yeah, Superman the movie is my favorite movie of all time.
But what you were saying before was very true. Like, great writing, but the execution of it, like the way that it was presented, like with those camera shots you were talking about, that's what elevates a film like this. You know?
Right, yeah.
Like, you got the great script and all, but executing, that's a whole nother level. So I think was it William Goldman that said, you can make a bad film out of a good script, but you can't make a good film out of a bad script.
Right,
you
yeah.
know? But when you do it well with a good script, that's what James.
Yeah, I mean, Mario Puzo wrote it. I mean, he wrote The Godfather. You can't go wrong with that. Richard Donner directed it. He had done The Omen. He does this, and then he does Lethal Weapon and countless other films after that. The Goonies.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable, his resume work. But again, he brought a true passion to this film, and I don't believe it's the film it is without Richard Donner.
Yeah,
and obviously
and Christopher
Reeves.
Reeves. Like
beyond.
Like you can't, it's hard to think of someone else that would have done it. Like I remember heering like they had Sylvester Stallone wanted to play it.
Yeah,
know, and they were looking at like Robert Redford and even Dustin Hoffman and but you can't, like, for me, I can't think of someone other than Christopher Reeve that would have been able to pull that off. Though
I think Richard Donner was smart in saying if you cast Robert Redford or Paul Newman, or
they're going to look at that. Yes,
and go,
that's all.
That's Robert
say.
Redford.
Yes,
you have to cast an unknown.
Yes.
And they created again another template. What they did was they cast an unknown and surrounded that individual with A-list movie stars. Mm-hmm. And that's what you see with a lot of the Marvel and DC kind of movies. They get an unknown to play the lead, and then they build around it. Yeah. So usually it's the enemy, your mentor figure, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I'm glad to have covered your favorite movie, favorite album. I flew in from Vegas today, which brings us to your favorite book.
Yeah.
Which is none other than Rat Pack Confidential. You're holding a first edition there?
Oh, come on. Really? That's
yeah.
Good choice.
Do you have the first edition of that?
No, I do not.
Well, you do now.
This is, well, thank you. That's awesome. Thank you, buddy. This is one of the first books I read when I started doing stand-up. And, you're looking for inspiration. You're also looking to appreciate the profession you work within. Now, I know none of these guys are stand-up comedians, but they were.
Well, Joey Bishop was.
Joey Bishop was,
one of them.
But they were performers that did the club circuit.
Right.
So 500 Club, et cetera,
yes.
all over the country. They were club performers. Obviously, all the storied residencies that they had in Las Vegas, et cetera, et cetera. But this is one of the first books I read where, coming out of college, you're trying to find and identify yourself and figure out, what is it I like now that I'm out of college? I can read whatever I want. This got me hooked on biographies, autobiographies, becoming inspired, and learning and culling from people's experiences in show business, like William Goldman. And you and I both read his books.
Yeah.
I learned so many things from his stories. This was the first one that kind of started this, where it inspired me to read more and more about them. But hearing individually about each one of these guys, and then collectively, I forget which page it was on this book, but they list all the Hollywood starlets. And you're like, oh my God, this is like every... And then you realize, no, that's a list of all the girls that these guys have collectively slept with. You're like, holy shit. I mean, they banged everybody.
Sure.
Everybody. I mean, what they collectively did in such a short amount of time, it wasn't long either. And nothing has been replicated in show business since. People have tried to replicate what they've done.
Right.
Nobody's had the social impact, the market value, like in terms of selling tickets, live or movies or albums, et cetera, et cetera.
But with these guys, there seemed to be a real sense of community back then during that time. Because you look at the main guys who are the Rat Pack. You got Sinatra, Dino, Frank, Peter, and Joey.
Yep.
Yeah. But then you look at the offshoot from that, like the original with Bogart, and then you got Katharine Hepburn, but then you got Shirley MacLaine. So you've got these, and Marilyn Monroe. You have these like juggernauts.
It was always evolving, yeah.
Yeah, but you got these juggernauts though, like they were the core group, but these like the biggest names in entertainment, Cary Grant, that were hanging out with these guys that were honorary members of the Rat Pack.
Right.
It's like you don't see anything like that today. Like,
no.
Like maybe like Ocean's 11, maybe at the time when it came out with Clooney and Pitt and those guys.
But even those guys, they're movie stars. They're not.
Yeah.
They have one gear, right?
Yeah,
These
it's not a lifestyle kind of thing where they're playing golf together, going drinking together, gambling together, performing on stage together. They're genuinely, they're a gang, or as they initially called themselves, the Clan. But then
the Clan, exactly, yeah. The Summit, et cetera, et cetera. But it all started with Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall calling them, "You look like a Rat Pack."
Yeah.
And then that going to the Hollywood Reporter, and that being branded the name. Then Bogart dies. Sinatra accepts the helm, creates his own kind of clan and the Summit, his own Rat Pack, and spiraling from there. But again, I think just to have the element of President Kennedy coming in, being part of it via Peter Lawford.
Yeah.
And then all of it kind of culminating into Las Vegas. And
the Sands.
At the Sands, which, there's Dean Martin Way, there's Sammy Davis Jr. Way, there's Sinatra Boulevard.
Yeah.
But it just is a bummer to me that there isn't, Vegas is known for, blowing up its history.
That's the biggest, like this week being in Vegas, that's a consistent conversation that I've had with people. It's just so disappointing, the lack of preservation of that town. Like, I would love to go to the Sands gaming floor and see the table that Sinatra dealt blackjack on. For me, and maybe we're in the minority here, build your megaplex behind it, but have the original Sands like facade and
or bring some of it over,
have the sign or something. But no, it's just decimate it and move on.
Acknowledge the past, kiss the ring.
Yes.
Because look, every time I go to the Flamingo, I learned something new. It was the first via Bugsy Siegel that came over there, and obviously was so incredibly unsuccessful that he lost his life over it.
Yeah.
But still there. And I watched Viva Las Vegas recently, so I could kind of like map out where the fountain is and the kind of grotto and all that stuff.
Yes.
To see where the pool used to be and stuff, and okay, that's kind of cool. And so they still have some semblance of acknowledgement of it.
Right. There's some little plaques and stuff, but in terms of the building,
it doesn't.
There's no
would love to see something like that. And so for me, I don't know. There's a great book called Sinatra in Vegas, or Elvis in Vegas. Where it's not even about Elvis in Vegas. The last 2 chapters are, but prior to, it's like 10 chapters on entertainment in Vegas, and it builds to Elvis being one of the first to really establish a residency there. But you're learning about all the French kind of like nude shows that came over that were very fashionable in the 60s and 70s. Then you're going into like the showgirl stuff, and then you're going into the Rat Pack, and they're coming in with some semblance of like your career's kind of on the way out. In the 80s and stuff, and then Cirque du Soleil coming in. So I've always been fascinated with the history of Vegas because of these guys.
Yeah.
That's how I got into it, but I also got into like the camaraderie and learning about Dean Martin from there on out, and learning about Sinatra from there on out, and Sammy Davis Jr. from there on out.
And it changes too, that like as a result of these guys that happen in that town that don't get enough acknowledgement, like Sinatra, right? Like during that time in the 50s, 60s, if you were a black entertainer, you were staying at the Moulin Rouge down across town. You couldn't enter through the front door, and you had to come in through. So they were insisting Sammy Davis.
Eric Bana loved that.
Yeah. So Sinatra says, well, if Sammy doesn't walk through the front door, I don't walk through the front door.
Exactly, yeah.
And he's the reason why that changed in Vegas. Black entertainers were then allowed to walk through the front door.
And that's the shame of like people that slag them for like off-color jokes, dated jokes, whatever. It's like, Dean Martin picking up Sammy Davis Jr. I like to thank the NAACP for this award. It's like, no, it's fucking funny because they're ribbing each other. But when push comes to shove, believe me, they're at the forefront.
Oh.
They're ribbing. You make fun of the ones you love, and reporters always ask, Sammy, do you feel like they go too far, whatever? He said, the minute they stop making fun of you is when they stop caring about you.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's such a great line, and it's so applicable to, especially I think what it is we're going through these days.
Right.
You make fun of trans people, whatever. It's like you can't make those jokes. Like no. They're part of the fold now. They're part of the community.
Right.
And if you're part of the community, then everybody gets it,
Right.
If I can make jokes about Koreans and Asians and blacks and, Democrats and liberals and conservatives and Republicans, then it's like you're now part of the fold. You're part of the lexicon. So
Sure.
that means like we should be able to make fun of you. Nobody's
Sure.
too sacred. And that's another facet I always appreciated about these guys, but they were at the forefront of that. And he would shit on them for their ethnicity. I mean, Sinatra's plane was called the Dago, like Dago 5 or something like that. Or something like that. And he and Dean Martin would call each other Dag.
Yeah.
So, at that time, Dago was a big insult to Italians.
Sure.
You tell an Italian, have an Irish call them that in the 50s in New York City, they're probably fighting. So, this book I'd highly recommend in terms of not only understanding the impact, but who wouldn't want to learn a little bit more about each one of these guys, especially Sinatra being, literally the leader,
the chairman of the board.
Yeah, literally the chairman of the board.
Yeah.
Steaming before shows, drinking all night.
Yeah.
Dean Martin gambling and giving people away. I mean, can you imagine these days if Matt Damon, while they're filming Ocean's 11, was just giving away $1,000 chips at the table? Like the MGM would have a shit fit.
Yeah.
But they were bringing in so much business. It's like, Dean, whatever you want. Give her as many chips as you want.
But there was something about that time, like when the mob ran Vegas, and
Right,
it reminded me of when I was at the Golden Nugget with Jonathan. Jonathan hated going to meetings, so I'd go on his behalf. And Jonathan was pulling in numbers like we're selling out every night. So I would go and represent in the boardroom the president, head of entertainment, head of marketing and advertising, and they would meet all of our demands because we're packing it out. David Brenner was on in the early show. His numbers weren't as great. And just listening to the way that they would talk down to David. And I remember like the servers have buttons advertising David's show. And I remember one of them saying, don't you think it's pretty tacky, David? You put a button on someone to promote your show. And he goes, but I know that gets tickets, sells tickets. People know about it. And they go, no, we're taking the buttons away. No more buttons. And we walked out of that and David's like, you want to go grab a coffee? And we sat down. He goes, you say what you want about the mob, but they gave you respect in this town at least. Goes,
well, I think people are so quick again to say goodbye to yesterday that, there was an article about Carol Burnett. She turned 90 and she wanted to throw like a 90th birthday kind of like retrospective on her career. She pitched it to CBS. CBS said no. They turned her down. She had done 11 years with the Carol Burnett on her show. I think like 5 or 6 variety shows with them. They were enormously successful. You have one of the pillars of your network in the 70s and into the 80s, and you're not going to acknowledge part of your past. And then she went to NBC, and it got like 8 million viewers.
Yeah.
And it was a huge success for them.
Yeah.
And it's like, why would you not kiss the ring?
Yeah.
Carol Burnett, she's a comedy icon.
Yeah.
So I think like this book is great because it details all 5 of these guys separately, how they kind of came together and coalesce. The Rat Pack is formed. It starts to blow up into something bigger than they ever dreamed. They take over Las Vegas.
They got movies.
They got movies out of it. They make movies together, and slowly it all kind of starts to break apart, and it really begins to break apart with the assassination of John F. Kennedy.
Yeah.
And it starts to spiral from there. And then they lose relevance kind of almost as quickly as they gained it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of sad, but
then it came to 1987. Remember when they came back and they did the big tour?
Yes.
And even like Frank and Dino were like, I don't know, people want to see us. The first show, 14,500 tickets sold like that.
Yeah.
Packed out. But then Dino had to leave the tour and Liza came on board.
Minnelli came on,
But I think, God, 1987, I would have loved it. I wish I had the foresight as,
Oh my God, to be
as an 8-year-old kid.
You're
to
gonna
have
love
gone,
this one day, yeah.
But I remember seeing them on TV though. I was, because like they were in like the Cannonball Run films together later on, so I knew who they were. I knew who Frank Sinatra was. I knew who Sammy was. I knew who Dino was. And seeing them on TV, I was always, I'd always like lean in to see. They just, here I am a kid, but I knew enough to know that these guys know what's going on.
Sure. Yeah. Then they it's like I've gone down YouTube rabbit holes where they each had variety shows afterwards, and they all kind of jump on and support each other. And there's times where I think it was, just watch Dean Martin on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. He's hammered. Yeah. He's fucking hammered, and it's hilarious. It's so bad. It's so bad, it's good. But on those variety shows, Sinatra and Dean Martin would pair up, and they'd do 8-minute medleys of each other's songs and riff and take bits and elements from the live performances and infuse them. And you just see the chemistry and camaraderie between them. There's that one great show that they did together in Kansas City, which was it's like a bootleg DVD that exists of them doing a charity where Johnny Carson's actually the MC because something happened with Joey Bishop.
Right.
So Johnny Carson filled in for Joey Bishop.
Right.
And so they're each one of them performs individually. Yes. Then they all kind of come out together at the end. But while they're doing it individually, there's a cameraman backstage filming them with a backstage mic shitting on each other. It's so fucking funny. And as they're backstage making fun of Dean Martin or whatever, they cut back to Dean Martin on stage, and he's just like loving it and laughing and having a great time and powering through it. Yeah. And again, it's just like, you don't see that anymore. You don't see that. Like stalwarts, A-list entertainers having fun with each other and ribbing each other and taking the piss out of each other.
And being true to who they are too, and they're not making any apologies for it either.
Yeah, exactly. This is my favorite book of all time. I could read this. I'll probably read it again on the plane ride home, to be honest with you.
When you mentioned the Carol Burnett, I remember in the mid-90s when it was the Grammy Awards, and it was the last time Sinatra was seen, and he was on stage doing his speech, and they start playing him off. I remember as a kid watching that, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, well, you're playing off Sinatra? Yeah. And then they just go to the ad break. And this was like the last time we're ever going to see this guy. Yeah. But Billy Joel came on after that, and he's doing the song The River of Dreams, bam, and he just stops, and he just puts his watch up to his face and just goes, and looks down the barrel of the camera and goes, valuable advertising dollars, valuable advertising dollars. And he just paused and looked out at the crowd, and they just started roaring and applauding.
That's great.
And it was just a perfect nod for Sinatra, just to give it back to them,
that's great.
And then bam, back into the song.
Well, it's again another thing about the industry. It's so thankless. I think you gotta if you're an entertainer, if you're an artist, you gotta look at the entertainment system business as a casino. Get in there, take what you can, get the fuck out, because they don't give a fuck. They're not there to be your friend. You can have chum. Believe me, the minute you stop making them money, you are out of the Rolodex. Industry is heat-seeking missiles. They're going wherever the heat is, period, across the board. So I think, Orson Welles, Citizen Kane, Magnificent Ambersons. I mean, he's done potentially one of the greatest films of all time, Citizen Kane. After his first 2 films, he had a hard time finding directing work again. And one of the best lines I ever heard about Los Angeles was from Orson Welles. And knowing his history with LA and the film industry, he said, all roads lead to the airport in Los Angeles. And it's like, it's such a great, it is. It's like, it's a casino. Get in, get what you want, and get the fuck out. Yeah. Period. Because they don't give a fuck, nor should you.
Well, like these guys, like Orson Welles, created their own heat, their own projects. Yeah. That's what you do. That's what you're going to continue on doing. Yeah. I look forward to seeing what's next for you.
Well, thank you, buddy. You too.
Yeah. This has been a pleasure.
Night in Lockdown. So, this is it. Rat Pack Confidential by Sean Levy. It's a quick read, easy read. He does it in such a conversational way. Superman the movie. It's available on HBO Max, or Max as they call it now. I know because I watch it all the time. I put it on when I'm working. And then this bad boy, taking a road trip, going to work. Listen to this. Thank me later. It's one of the greatest fucking rock albums you'll ever hear. And just watch Noel Gallagher 10 minutes, Noel Gallagher watches his own music videos. It's fucking hilarious.
Well, thank you, Steve.
Joel, thank you, my
Appreciate
buddy.
it. All the best.
Appreciate it.